So how do you feel that the Conservative Party in Wales has dealt with diversity? Do you think it's been successful, or there's room for improvement?
I think all parties there's room for improvement. I mean, life is about a constant evolution of improvement, it is. But I think we've made huge strides in what we've done to promote all sections of society. Electorally, we've been successful at a local government level last year, where we did have a diverse field of candidates standing. And we put into the field 628 candidates, I think, which was a record number of candidates standing for us. And at successive elections, Assembly, Parliamentary, Westminster elections, and obviously European elections, we have sought, certainly over the last 10 years, to broaden our base of candidates, to have more women standing, more ethnic minorities standing. But ultimately, is there more we can do? Of course there's more we can do.
So the Welsh Conservatives have never had a female MP in Wales. In the Assembly, it's about 27% of elected representatives that are Conservatives are women. I think it was 32% of candidates in the local election last year. There's clearly some way to go. What are the barriers in getting more women standing?
I think there's three, really. Whether you call them barriers or not, because people, when you say barrier, have an image of a stone wall, and I never get over that. But I think concerns, observations or issues that people have about putting themselves forward to be candidates, and I think that's across the board these issues exist, is one, understanding what the commitment will be. Because a lot of people don't understand the level of commitment that might or might not have to be given, and the change in circumstances both for their families and themselves that would affect them if they did get elected. Secondly then, there is that impact on the day job. And by that I mean the one that pays the mortgage and ultimately puts the shirts on the kids' backs. Because obviously before you actually get elected, you are a candidate for some considerable time, you are. And in today's politics, especially at Assembly level and Parliamentary Westminster level, the public at large expect you to almost be a full-time candidate. And that's a big conversation to have within the family about being able to take that 2, 3, 4 years out of your life to be the candidate. And so I do think there's a huge information exercise needed and a support exercise needed to try and get more people coming forward who don't necessarily see themselves as potential politicians. And then the third and final aspect of getting more female representation and more ethnically diverse representation is actually making sure that people understand that political parties, and in particular the Welsh Conservative Party, exists to represent communities. They're not, self-interest groups. They're not about being about one or two individuals. They're about pushing the things that are important in people's lives. And actually, if you're at home and you have a concern about something, the democratic process, whether it be at local government level, Assembly level or Westminster level, is the way to get involved, let that anger out of the system and change the system. And so to me, those are the three obstacles about breaking down the understanding of actually no one's born a politician, you evolve into that then, and you do.
So I wanted to talk about Bridgend and Newport last year. Obviously there was some difficulty in I think the party actually trying to be more diverse and fielding representative candidates, but actually there was issues with local constituency parties there. How do you think that that can be improved upon? Do you think that local parties are an obstacle for diversity?
No, not at all. I mean, they were unique circumstances because obviously, basically, it was a snap election. I mean, the normal cycle of selecting candidates can be done at a relatively leisurely pace. The target seats, for example, most probably would select 2.5, 3 years out. And therefore, the association has the time and energy to select the candidate that they fit comfortably with and know that they're going to work for 2.5, 3 years. The selection process that was undertaken last year for many associations was a selection and campaign process all combined in an 8-week period. It was then. Ironically, there was no objection to the female candidates that were finally endorsed by them to stand as their prospective MPs. It was more the diktat that said, this is the process you're going to adopt to do it. And associations in the Conservative Party are very autonomous organisations, and like many individuals, they hate being told what to do for very good reasons. They're in a membership organisation, and rather than getting told from the top what to do, membership organisations exist by being told what to do from the bottom via the votes within the associations. It's a funny thing called democracy. So I have a foot in both camps. I have huge sympathy with the plight or the problem via the selection process, not the individual candidates, but the process that was put onto associations. But I do have an understanding that obviously in an 8-week period, not only do candidates have to be found and put in place, but a campaign had to be fought as well then. And fingers crossed, we don't get too many snap elections, and a lessons learned exercise has been undertaken, and I'm pretty darn sure that those type of events won't happen again.
I'm pretty hopeful that there's not another snap election. I quite like my sleep at night. I wanted to talk about other parties have used a lot of measures in the past, whether it might be organ shortlists, zipping, quotas. Is that something the Conservative Party should be looking at?
I as an individual don't support that. I believe people get on in life via merit. I do believe that there are some obstacles or barriers that you talk about that most probably need the edges taken off them, but I think they exist for all candidates, to be honest with you. I mean, I said in my opening remarks, one of the big issues for candidates coming forward, male, female, ethnic background or whatever, disabilities as well, is the level of commitment and time and energy that has to go into being that candidate and deflecting you from the job that is paying your mortgage, putting the shirt on the backs of kids, and making sure that you've got income coming through the door. And I generally have seen many candidates who have virtually gone to the point of financial ruin by the energy and time that they've had to put into being candidates, not getting successfully elected then, and looking back on maybe 8 to 12 years worth of being a candidate, because very often at a parliamentary level, either Assembly or Westminster, a candidate can be fighting a seat for 2 or 3 cycles they can then. And to me, the biggest obstacle for people coming in and putting themselves forward in the first instance is that fear almost of the unknown. So rather than having quotas, which I think are quite obstructive in some respects, I think we're just going to do a far better job of selling what is on offer about being a candidate, and hopefully, if you get elected, being a successful politician. There is no more rewarding job than being able to serve the community that you've been elected. It's a huge privilege, and whilst politics is a rough and tumble game, the people who come into this office where you were sitting there now, Jess, we had a couple last night who basically have been threatened with eviction out of their home. Now, if you can help them through their plight and get to the other side and put them in a good place, there's nothing more rewarding than that. And that is the payback for being a politician.
Why do you think there is so much more, prohibitive circumstances for diverse candidates? Because those circumstances that you've just described apply for all candidates, I assume. So what is it that makes it so much worse for women, people from ethnic minorities?
I think wrongly, but I think a lot of people look and say, that's not for me. And sadly, I don't know, maybe it's an historical perception in that if you look at the images coming out of the House of Commons, you basically see a wall of men, you do then debating and discussing, and actually subconsciously people from an ethnic diverse background or disabilities or women would think that's not for me actually, and that colours the view, that does. And I go back to this educational role and this promotional role. Politics is for everyone. When I left school at 16, I never thought for a minute I would be a full-time politician by the age of what I get elected to the Assembly when I was 38, I think it was then. It didn't cross my mind, it didn't then. But I got particularly angry about a particular event that hit my community, and so I thought, well, I'm going to give this a go. And so unless you have that eureka moment, then really that perception doesn't get taken out of your mind, and so you therefore don't put yourself forward to even be considered to be a candidate. And so, as I said, to me, the key to this is about promoting and creating a better understanding that none of us are born politicians. Hopefully we evolve into that scene because something has happened in our lives that makes us passionate about it.
It's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? Because I was looking at the Berwick and Morgan Council Cabinet the other day. Obviously they have no female councillors in their cabinet. When women in that area are looking at that council, obviously it does seem prohibitive. You just described how people look at the House of Parliament and they see a wall of white middle-aged men. How do you really get into communities and work with potential candidates and encourage them to stand?
Well, I think in the first instance, rather than just look at the cabinet, you look at the wider Conservative group on the Vale Council, and there's some fantastic female candidates. I was with one last night, Rachel, who won Carrickston, the first time we've had a Conservative councillor, certainly in living memory in Carrickston. You know, it's a rock-solid Labour ward normally, and Rachel is fighting tooth and nail in that ward. She was telling me about how she brings young people into the council chamber to explain what the council does, something that, as far as she's concerned, no one else has done. Almost a bit like the visits to the Assembly or the visits to Parliament, and she's very keen on expanding that. Catherine from over in Penarth, who represents Plymouth Ward as well, is another very powerful example of a woman breaking into politics and going to be a great asset to the community there. And so, you know, you can pick up many. The Deputy Mayor, for example, is a female next year as well coming in, and Leighton Rowlands, who is the Mayor for next year, champions obviously LGBT rights as such then, and obviously, you know, is a great example of a young man coming in as well. So, you know, young, old, middle-aged, female, male. I'd like to think that rather than just focusing on the cabinet, it's important to look at the whole, and the whole, certainly after the last local government elections, dramatically changed the dynamics for the Conservatives here in the Vale of Glamorgan and beyond. Because as I said, you know, we put 628 candidates into the field last year in the local government elections. That was our highest number. I think we were the second highest in Wales on candidate numbers. Labour were by far the biggest, but from a Welsh Conservative Party that's been in government in Westminster for 7-8 years now, most parties suffer fatigue at membership level. Well, if you can put 628 council candidates into the field, that shows there's a great vibrancy and people wanting to actually stand as Conservatives, whether it be at local government, assembly or parliamentary level.
Given, I guess, the changes and evolution within the party at the last local elections, do you think that next time round there is a target to have women in council cabinet seats, to have women in leadership positions in council? Well,
I know the Welsh Board and myself are really up for, you know, recruiting the next generation of candidates, if you like, because if the next cycle of elections will be the next generation of elections. Uniquely, in this cycle, we now have a 2-3 year, I think 2020 is the first election, which is the Police and Crime Commissioner, but we have this respite almost from elections at the moment, unless a snap election gets called by someone, to obviously do that. I mean, I think all political parties have had election fatigue, and the electorate in particular had election fatigue. I think I added up the elections that I've fought since 2007 last year, so bear in mind we're in 2018 now, but in 2017, and I think in 10 years we'd fought 14 different elections of one shape or form we had. Now that, doing the arithmetic, means that some elections were held twice in a year, they were then. I mean, if you take the Police and Crime Commission election 2012, the local government elections as well were held that same year. So it's not just the electorate who have fatigue, but I think it's fair to say political parties have maybe taken the eye off the ball of nurturing new candidates to come forward because they've been fighting the elections all the time. And this is an opportunity now to do that explaining job that I talked about, to do that informing of what a great opportunity is to fight an election and fight for your constituency, fight for your ward, fight for your community. And if you do get elected, what a hugely rewarding job it is. You know, don't leave all the negativity in the press. It is an exciting time to be in politics, and I very much hope that with that information there, we'll be able to bring a whole new generation of candidates forward. We will.
Just briefly, I want to talk about the electorate. We've long argued at ERS that there is an element of a democratic deficit, there is a lack of engagement in assembly elections, local elections in Wales. How do you think that lack of representation plays into fatigue? And I'm not just talking about the Conservative Party here, I'm talking about, you know, the whole of the Assembly, the whole of local government in Wales. Do you think it is a little bit of a turn-off for the electorate to see faces that don't necessarily represent them in positions of power?
Well, I think there's two things there. I don't think it's necessarily down to faces and individuals, although that is one part of the equation, obviously, to get people to buy in, because actually when the literature comes through, we'll have that conversation. If you can't empathise with that person, then you know, you're on an uphill slope, you are then. But I think there's two things at play here. One is an electorate that, regrettably, given all the levels of democracy we now have, don't really understand who does what. The amount of people I have coming to me to talk to me about Westminster issues, and then vice versa, I'll talk to MPs and say that they're getting lots of things on health. There's a huge disconnect between exactly what roles are filled by who, and therefore a frustration creeps in then, and when that frustration creeps in, it's almost, oh, you're all the same, I can't be bothered. And that apathy then feeds in. And then the second strand, from a Welsh perspective, is the very small media that we do have in Wales giving coverage to everyday events. I mean, you know, Carwyn Jones resigned well, not resigned, but said he was standing down on Saturday. My electrician was out with me doing a job, and he's an educated guy. He is, you know, he's running a company of 30 plus employees, lots of vans on the road. He came up to do a job on my place on Monday, and he said, well, how are things going down the bay then? How's Carwyn down there, he said then. And I said, oh, well, he announced he's off on Saturday. He did then. Well, what do you mean off? What do you mean? And he'd be someone who you would have thought would be in tune with current affairs, and I know he is in tune with current and political affairs, but he didn't really know that that had happened over the weekend. And when you get that level of disconnect, then it's not unsurprising you don't get a buy-in to the electoral process. And to me, one of the huge disappointments is that we lose about 20% of the electorate between a general election and an assembly election. And as I said, irrespective of whatever political colour you represent, I just think that's a huge to-do job from us all to get greater enthusiasm and buy-in to the assembly election process. Because if not, there is that discrepancy, and you could put a question mark against legitimacy. You know, I accept turnout is turnout, and the ballot box is the ballot box. But as a Democrat, I want as many people as possible to go to that ballot box and cast their vote, or postal vote, or dare I say in the future electronic vote as such. Then, but whether that comes or not, I think is a discussion for another day.
Just really briefly, last question. What 3 things do you think you can do as leader to improve diversity in the Conservative Party in Wales?
3 things.
Yeah.
Be positive.
Yeah.
Be really positive about the experience and about what you can achieve in politics. Rather than it just looked as a job not for me, actually enthuse people to come forward. And so with that enthusiasm, explaining, second thing, explaining and showing the route into politics and how you can stand and make a difference for your community. Because as I said, when I started off in life, working life at 16, I certainly never thought I'd be a politician. But as I said, it's one of the greatest privileges, I believe, that I've had so far in my life. I hope there's a few more things still to come, nice things still to come, not just nasty things to come. And then the third thing is working within my, selfishly, if you like, thinking from a Conservative perspective, working within my own party to make sure that the structures are in place to support people coming through the system who want to be candidates. Because there's one thing being enthused about it and saying what a great opportunity it is, but there's another thing actually reflecting on the practicalities of stopping people becoming, and they might be financial, they might be at childcare, they might be around disability issues, they might be around ethnicity as such, and who people might think, well, you know, I'm not going to stand for them as such. Yeah. And it's interesting to note that obviously in the last Assembly session, we had 2 of our group of 14 from ethnic minority backgrounds, Oscar and Altaf. And it's great to see Altaf now sitting on the Gen County Council as such as of last year and doing a bloody good job, if I'm meant to say that.
Yeah, it's
doing a very good job, should I say, on the Gen Council as well. So those are the 3 things that I think I can do from my position. But above all, as I said, the most important thing to me is to be about positive. Really positive about the experience you get, because so many people read the negativity of one of the red tops or one of the other papers, and there's this image that all politicians are in it for themselves. I have to say, I genuinely believe most politicians, if not all in the first instance, certainly put themselves forward for the right reasons.
I know I said last time was my last question, but this is my actual final question.
It's raining outside, it's nice to sit in.
So one of the things I think normal diversity reports focuses on, they often only talk to women. How do you think men, especially male politicians, can feed into this debate?
Well, I think by a lot of the report authors actually speaking to men as well, then. There's almost like a presumption we're doing a report on women in politics or obstacles to entry into politics or whatever, and men are all right, and actually there's no need to have a conversation with them. Men, have a stake in this as well. And most men I speak to want a diverse pool of politicians. I speak to very few men, and I speak to even fewer women who actually say it's got to be all women, or it's got to be all men, or it's got to be from this community, or it's got to be from that community. Actually, there's a great enthusiasm, I find, from all sections of the political divide to try and create this diversity. But actually, if you suddenly get a lot of these reports which have only spoken to one part of the equation, you'll never get the answer to the equation, you won't then. So to me, I think there needs to be greater plurality in looking at finding the solutions rather than thinking all the solutions exist in one envelope. They never do. You really have got to look at the whole picture.
Angela Davies, thank you.
No problem at all, Jess.